welcome to the evening news. We are receiving breaking news from Mount Greylock region. To stay tuned. Now over to you.
Thank you. I am standing here on the great Mount Greylock, where we have this lime kiln where Mr. Brand committed suicide. We have multiple interviews scheduled, so please stay tuned for further updates on this breaking news story. I am here with Joe, son of Bartram, the attendant of the lime kiln where the bones were found. He was with Ethan Brand the last night and was the last person to see him before his disappearance and suspected suicide. Joe, what can you tell me about when you met Mr. Brand?
Well, at first he scared me because his laugh wasn't really that of a happy man. But when we left him before the end of the night, we actually felt really bad. I felt really bad for him because he seemed really lonely. But that night I had dark and haunting images in my dreams.
Oh, really? We will have an expert dream analysis later to determine the significance of such a vision. Thank you very much.
No problem.
As promised, I'm here with the dream interpreter. She has a PhD in psychology. Joe's dream signifies the subconscious awareness of his surroundings.
Yes, Joe is very wise beyond his years in being able to interpret his dream to show the bleak and terrible loneliness which surrounded Ethan Brand. His dreams with the haunting images show that he had a greater understanding than people around him realized. And this particular story reminds me of Joseph, son of Jacob, who appears in the book of Genesis in the Bible. He was referred to as a dreamer by his stepbrothers, and he interpreted a dream of the Pharaoh in which 7 skinny cows ate 7 fat cows, and 7 thin stalks of corn ate 7 fat stalks of corn, to show that 7 years of abundance would be followed by 7 years of famine. He ended up saving the village by stockpiling food, and he was commended for being very wise, much like Joe, son of Bartram.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate your time here this evening.
Thank you very much.
I am here on Mount Greylock with Giles, a former lawyer from Mount Greylock. He was an acquaintance of Ethan Brand before he set off on his journey. Now, you went and saw Mr. Brand on the night that he was killed, correct?
Yes, he was always looking for the unpardonable sin, and he was just insane and just totally attached to it.
What were your opinions of it? Did you feel that he was chasing it for too long?
I feel like it was one of those things where you just kind of need to let it go. He was really attached to it.
And Giles, what has changed in the town since Mr. Brand went off on his search?
Not much. The tavern is definitely the center of life in town. I, however, have become a soap maker.
Oh, really?
Liquor has really affected my career. I used to be a lawyer, but now I'm a drunk soap.
Well, thank you very much for your time. And there you have it. Thank you very much, Giles. And now back to you in the studio. Go.
In other news, the wandering Jew was spotted last night on Mount Greylock. There have been sightings all over, but this particular one was verified by all who were with Ethan, Joe, and Giles. We have a local priest here to discuss what a momentous event this encounter was.
Thank you for having me. I'll actually be reading this part about the Wandering Jew, straight out of the Bible. The Wandering Jew, whose name was Ahasuerus, was a shoemaker. When Jesus was on his way to crucifixion, Ahasuerus taunted him, saying, "Go on quicker, Jesus, go on quicker. Why dost thou loiter?" Jesus responded to this denunciation by proclaiming, "I will stand here and rest, but you must wander the earth until I return." The Jew sought death, but was never able to find it. He set the standard for committing the unpardonable sin.
I'm sorry, I don't know what the unpardonable sin is.
Well, the unpardonable sin is actually defined in Mark 3, Matthew 12, which states, "He who blasphemes against the Holy Spirit never has forgiveness, but is subject to eternal condemnation. Therefore, anyone who does not believe in the power of the Messiah is incapable of being saved, because God will not save those who neglect or despise Christ's sacrifice, and deliberate refusal of the grace of God is one sin which by nature is irremediable. The unpardonable sin cannot be committed by a true Christian."
Can you please repeat the name of the wandering Jew? We are currently getting emails from our listeners.
Yes, of course. His name is Ahasuerus. The unique thing is that it is also the name of the king of Persia who was married to Esther. Ahasuerus removed his first wife as queen when she undermined his authority, and ordered that all of the beautiful girls in Persia be presented to him so that he could choose a new bride. One of the girls was Esther, and she became the queen. However, Ahasuerus did not realize that she was Jewish. His prime minister, Haman, planned to kill all of the Jewish people in Persia after one refused to bow to him. Esther holds a series of banquets, and at the second one, reveals to her husband that she is also Jewish, which means that she would be killed by the royal decree as well. Ahasuerus puts forth a second decree, allowing the Jews to defend themselves when attacked. With this heroism, Esther saves the Jews in Persia. Although his presence is strongly felt, this makes it very similar to the story of Joseph in Genesis 41.
Really? We heard about the story from the psychologist earlier when we were talking about dreams. How are they related exactly?
Well, they both show the ultimate goodness of people in what appear to be very bad situations. And we also get to see the struggle between Satan and God's purpose, which is the promise of the Messiah. And Satan has set himself against Christ and God's people. The second similarity is that although these events are not historically accurate, they provide an allegory about what is going on at the time in history.
Thank you very much, Father.
May peace be with you.
We have a name analysis here to break down the meaning of Ethan Brand. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with Ethan. What does that mean?
Well, Ethan means strong or wise, and in terms of biblical references, Ethan was a very wise man in the Bible whose wisdom was surpassed by Solomon.
What does brand mean?
Well, brand has a couple different meanings. It can literally mean burning a piece of wood. In terms of Ethan Brand, who we are talking about, he burned wood when he was an attendant at the lime kiln, but he literally burned when he jumped into the lime kiln and died. It can also mean a mark burned into the skin to identify a slave or a criminal. And as we learned from Giles, he was kind of a slave to this desire to learn about the unpardonable sin. And finally, it can mean a mark of shame or disgrace. And he seemed, from what we've heard, to have a little bit of shame from his way of finding out about the unpardonable sin as he did with Humphrey's daughter.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Hawthorne.
Thank you.
So, in your interview with us last week regarding your story, Ethan Brand, you said that the story is neither true nor historically accurate. So with this breaking news story, do you feel that your tale of Ethan Brand is coming to life, per se?
Yeah, they have some really eerie similarities, down to the very details of the breaking news.
And what inspired you to write the story of Ethan Brand?
Well, one night I was climbing Mount Greylock at midnight, and I came across a lime kiln, and it just inspired me, and my brain started just formulating the story. But another thing that is currently bothering me is the way in which new scientific discoveries are being made in very unethical ways, and so I wanted to talk about that without actually saying it outright.
Okay, and also in our last interview, you said that you based much of Ethan Brand on biblical stories.
Yes.
Could you please give an example of such an allusion?
Well, one of those allusions would be when I taught Humphrey's daughter as the Esther of our tale, I was relating it back to the book of Esther. Esther, the queen of Persia, was renowned for her beauty, and as is Humphrey's daughter, she is a glittering circus performer, and I said that she is a grand figure in the world. Like Esther, the queen actually literally had a grand figure as the queen, being royalty, but she also saved an entire population of Jewish people from being killed in Persia, so that's the figurative way to look at that. But another thing to note is that Ethan Brand wasted, absorbed, and perhaps annihilated her soul. But after he does this, he's no longer able to look Humphrey in the eyes, which shows that he feels remorse. And because of this, it gives you insight that he did not actually commit the unpardonable sin. Because God gives sinners a depraved state of mind when they commit the unpardonable sin, and they are not able to feel the slightest remorse. So I provide this contrast by showing him in the same scene as the wandering Jew, whose very life is defined as by having committed the unpardonable sin. So when he mocks Ethan Brand for not being able to see what is contained in this box, it shows that Ethan Brand has not actually found this, although he feels that he did. Another well-known story in the Bible is when Judas betrays Jesus, and so I kind of paralleled that to Ethan Brand. After Judas does commit this sin, he feels so remorseful that he ends up killing himself, much like Ethan Brand in my book, and like Ethan Brand, whose remains were found in the lime kiln. He was unable to live with his guilt, and so was Ethan Brand.
thank you very much for your time, Mr. Hawthorne.
Thank you very much for
Best
having
of
me.
luck with your new book.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, he shows up right after the Wandering Jew mocks Ethan Brand for not being able to see the unpardonable sin. And so the dog represents Ethan Brand and his inability to reach his goal. He never is able to reach his tail in the same way that Ethan Brand is never able to find the unpardonable sin. But whereas the dog kind of just stops after he realizes it's impossible, Ethan Brand spent 18 years trying to do the impossible. Yes.
Okay. The color blue comes up a lot in the story, and it symbolizes peace, cooling, and soothing. And Ethan Brand, in a way, finds peace after facing all this pain on Earth. And the flame in the kiln is also blue, which could symbolize passion.
The fire in the kiln is blue that Ethan Brand kind of throws himself into. So I guess that kind of goes along with the fire being like it's like the biggest symbol in the story. It's like you can't miss it.
Yes, because the fire, it can represent a couple different things. It can either represent like hell and like the hellfire, which comes up with the alcohol and like fire water.
Yeah, fire liquid.
Or like
Yeah.
calm and like peaceful point of view, like he's ending his life from like the torment and torture.
Yeah.
And also, fire can either be representing the devil or God,
Yes.
because in a lot of biblical stories, fire comes up, like the burning
Like the
bush.
burning bush.
Like
and,
able to converse with the people through fire.
Yeah.
God's
yeah,
able
like
to.
the Holy Spirit appearing in fire. It appears a lot in the Bible.
So Marble, so in the story, Ethan Brand, after he jumps in the fire, his bones and his marble
He wants to
so
be in this.
the marble is white, and that can represent purity or innocence, and it's hard, marble can't burn, so
No, it cannot.
it's like,
And that's significant because they keep saying throughout the whole book that they're burning marble to make
Right.
lime, but you
Mhm.
can't actually burn marble.
no, like you can make burn marks, but you can't actually like change its form.
In actuality, you make lime through burning limestone,
Yeah.
but so the marble, you can't burn it. So.
No, so it's like Ethan Brand, like, yeah, he jumped in the fire and died, but like the symbolic parts of fire didn't affect him. Yes.
Yeah, I guess, and I guess one of the main reasons you might have used marble is because, I mean, in the Mount Greylock region, marble is like abundant, it's everywhere, so I guess it was like one of the main places where they mined it, and well, Mount Greylock, it's actually kind of symbolic how Ethan Brand kind of kills himself on Mount Greylock, because it's like the highest point in Massachusetts even, and so by going up on this mountain and, well, rather killing himself, it's kind of like he's getting closer to God when he kills himself, so I guess that could mean that he's actually a really good person. He doesn't find the unpardonable sin.
And like, aside from the symbols, one of the main themes during the story was alienation. And so Ethan Brand was like in a way bullied by everyone in the town, and that's kind of one of the reasons he left. And so he spent 18 years looking for this unpardonable sin, and he believes he found it. He says it's like in his chest. And when he comes back, everyone tells him that he didn't find it, and he pretty much wasted 18 years of his life, and they like say that he's crazy. So like he really is alienated by society and bullied, which might have which did lead to his suicide.
That leads to one of the other themes, which is like committing sin and the consequences that go with that. And for Ethan Brand, he committed sins on his quest to find the unpardonable sin, which he is remorseful over that, which ends up leading to his suicide because he realizes that what he did wasn't worth it.
Dark romanticism shows up in Ethan Brand a lot because of the themes of isolationism and alienation. Ethan Brand was alienated from society when he was on this long journey by himself, and he was sort of an outcast from society.
And another like, common characteristic of dark romanticism are the psychological effects of guilt and sin. And so in the story, Ethan Brand, he finds unpardonable sin, and along the way he like commits sins with Humphrey's daughter. And so that leads, like his psychological effects end up with being suicide in the end.
A third characteristic of dark romanticism would be the conflict between science and religion. And that is kind of, it's underneath the whole story is Nathaniel Hawthorne's commentary on the fact that the way in which research is being done is unethical at this time. And so Ethan Brand is trying to figure out what the unpardonable sin is, and by doing that, he uses unethical means such as the way
I mean, Dark Romanticism, that really fits into like what Hawthorne's writing about, because Hawthorne kind of reflects a lot of the characteristics of Dark Romanticism. Like, I mean, like one of the biggest characteristics of Hawthorne's writings is really like the presence of like death, both like literally, because well, Ethan Brand throws himself into the fire and Ethan Brand kills himself, but also in like kind of like a metaphorical way, as in he's representing the death of his innocence. With Ethan Brand killing himself, it's kind of like the death of his innocence after being alienated from society. And this also shows up in Young Goodman Brown when we read about that, because after his kind of venture in the woods with the devil, he is never the same again. He's like this old, mean... Corbins are coming down. That's really just the death of innocence in the entire story.
The idea of death and the loss of innocence goes along with the idea of unhappiness, because once Ethan Brand loses his innocence, he becomes unhappy and remorseful because of the choices that he's made, and that leads to his ultimate death at the end where he commits suicide.
The choice between good and bad, like good and evil. Ethan Brand always has the option of good or evil, because although he's like talking to the devil or like, you know, like he kills himself and everything, go to God and be good.